Is it a lot of vaccinations or 50-50? How do you?
It's probably close to, not quite 70%. I'm guessing right now. So it's a healthy number, but it's not unanimous.
Do you anticipate any more vaccinations before you get to camp?
We're not mandating, and I'm not mandating anything. I don't feel like that's the proper thing to do. What we've tried to do is just articulate to our guys what the rules are and what the standards are. Although I still don't know what the game day protocol is going to be. We haven't. I think we find that out next week. Official word from the Big Ten, but as far as our operation right now, anybody that's not vaccinated has to get tested on a regular basis, and then they're all subject to contact tracing. Obviously, if they get sick, they're going to be, CDC guidelines still pertain there. So we did have one bout of it early in June, and I know that impacted a couple players. That's where the reality of it all set in for them, that, if we were playing Saturday, you're not playing. So I think that's something a lot of our players are probably weighing right now, just how valuable these opportunities are. I think if we learned anything last year, nothing's, assured, right, as far as playing games and your career goes. So I think that's something that's in our players' thoughts, but, we're going to leave it up to them to decide.
I would imagine missing the testing, or not having to test would be the biggest.
That would have been enough for me personally. Yeah, just that PCR test. Holy smokes! So that's motivation enough for me. But that's me. But yeah, these guys have been doing it weekly, and that's not a good thing.
So are they going to be weekly during the season, or is it going to be daily for the guys who aren't?
I assume weekly, but I really haven't heard 100%. Yeah.
Northwestern, said they're almost 95%. Did you see this being a competitive disadvantage if you're at 70?
Oh, it's one more thing for a coach to have to be aware of. Yeah. One more possibility. You could lose a player at any time and I think it's 10 days right now. Plus, they still have to, have cardiac tests and those kinds of things, not the MRI. But so it's not a simple thing if you get sick. And there's not 100% assurance for anybody, but at least as a coach, I'm definitely going to want to know who's on that, warning list, if you will, because we could, just like last year, we could find out Friday that, this player's not playing. Not good.
Health-wise, how are you going into camp?
Pretty good overall. We always there's always wear and tear injuries in the course of summer. We train hard, and we had a couple players that had surgeries back in the spring. And I think right now rehab's going very well, so we're optimistic they'll be ready for the season when it starts. But just keep our fingers crossed on that.
Is Logan Jones, Ivory Kelly, are they both going to be ready in August?
Logan's the one that's, I think I mentioned that last time we were together. I don't envision him being ready this August. So hopefully he'll be able to return sometime in the fall, but I can't predict that right now.
Ivory Kelly.
He's doing good. Yeah, he's doing well. Yeah.
In regards to running back Tyler Goodson, what do you remember about his recruitment process and what made you want to go down to Georgia and recruit him, and how you see him develop in the program to now?
I can't give you the entire story about how we got onto Tyler, but he had an interest. There's a mutual interest. It's funny, I was thinking about this yesterday. We haven't had many prospects come with the new recruiting official visits in the spring. I think I'm correct in saying he's the only one that came for our last practice. The rest of them all come in June or have come in June, and I think we're talking about 2 years really, but a couple years of this. But I remember he and his mom came in on a Friday or a Thursday, and they had to leave Saturday morning, I think. But I don't mind telling you, I was concerned about that. That was not my first choice. We'd rather have him here for with everybody else. But I remember yesterday sitting down with he and his mom, and again, I wasn't overly optimistic just because I prefer it when there's a little bit more energy. But obviously he had a good visit and committed to us, and then some other people came in afterwards. That's probably the other memory I have about his recruitment, and they stayed the course. So we're thrilled about it, and Atlanta's not a routine place for us to recruit, but our history is we find a good player that has an interest in us, and we're going to try to follow up with him.
I wanted to ask about the transfer portal. With the change of not having to sit out that 1 year, does that change your view on the transfer portal and the opportunities it provides to get players?
It does. I mean, we're not out there, encouraging or shopping around, all that kind of stuff, but it's probably going to factor in at some point. And, as a coach, on one hand, you're worried about that. On the other hand, you can't do anything about it. So, if a player decides they're not happy or they want to, enter in, then that's the way it's going to be. probably the biggest concern I have personally is just the player understanding that the grass may not be greener on the other side. That's one obvious fear of this whole thing, is that I've always felt like, you know, if a player doesn't give it enough time, and, you know, Colin Cole was just up this past week. He's a great example. Our first recruiting class, homesick, wanted to go home. Pretty sure there's a girlfriend involved. Pretty sure that's usually the case. But I remember his mom telling him to stay. And I mean, we've had 100 stories like that. And I think he would tell you he's glad he did. But it's way too easy just to surrender that first time it gets bumpy. And it always gets bumpy. So that's my hope, so that all of our players have good support outside of the building. Like, you know, someone who they listen to that says, hey, stay there, it's supposed to, you're going to fail. That's just part of life, part of doing anything competitive.
It seems like a lot of the other teams here have a tremendous number of players from the transfer portal. Do you think maybe you're not that way because you're not having to fill in as many gaps? You have a lot of experience returning on the roster this year?
I think that's in part true. It's interesting, I was thinking about this on the plane coming over today. The two guys, I mean, you know, so somebody may get a marquee guy. We got Zach Van Volkenberg, who I think's a marquee guy, but he wasn't 2 years ago, right? It was not a big story. But he turned out to be a really good fit, and I happened to be with Aaron Kampman very recently, and I'm not saying he's Aaron Kampman, but Aaron Kampman, when he made the switch to defensive end in 2000, was a good player, solid player. 2001, I think he led the league in sacks. But his best football, kind of like George Kittle, came after he left us. But part of that was that transition. Zach, fortunately, he's got 3 years. This is year 3 instead of 2. Not that he changed positions when he came here, but he's comfortable now. Like what I saw this spring is a guy who's really playing fast, and he's confident. So we probably do better with that kind of a transfer. A guy like Mackay, who just, you know, we had an opening. KB had said something about him 4 months before that. We researched it, felt like he's a really good fit for what we do and who we are. And, you know, what a great guy to have on our football team the last couple of years. So that's probably, we feel more comfortable, I guess, in doing that. But, you know, you can't rule anything out. We'll see what happens in the future.
Do you reevaluate the recruiting part of things after you had one official weekend in June? You typically do, but you didn't have a lot of exposure to them beforehand. But after kind of a lack of success from that weekend, did you evaluate what you did? Do you think in hindsight?
I think there's a bigger story. I mean, we're going to evaluate everything, obviously, and talk about it. But I think there's a bigger story to me. I shared this with our staff. The first weekend of June, a guy that we had an interest in, he was really a developmental player, more of a Chauncey Golston type guy, not a 5-star guy, and didn't have a lot of I don't think significant offers, if you will, or big offers. But anyway, he visited a school and committed what I thought was kind of randomly. Surprised, it really surprised us. But I think in that case, I think one thing, observations, I think a lot of guys got, for whatever reason, just jumped before they had to, maybe, or committed before they had to. And I know that's a game gets played at the other end. We got one spot for one parachute, and there's 5 people on the plane, all that stuff. So anyway, so I'm off a tangent here, but that was one aspect, and then the other aspect of waiting until the end. You may not get a guy to campus, right? And we saw that happen. But the bottom line is this: I think what I think really has impacted us the most right now is the fact, as much as we enjoyed this spring, just in and out of the building, basically it was pure coaching this spring. No visitors, all that. We really benefit and do better if we have people in the building all the time, watching practice, spending time getting to know people. And we also do better when we have camps and get to know guys at a young age and see things. So I think that's really impacted things a little bit. And as you know, we kind of like to, really know what we're doing when we try to recruit as much as possible, as much as you can, and find a fit that's good. So, my attitude's been we don't have a lot of scholarships this year. It's not a big class, and I'd rather us just be patient and prudent and then make sure we're doing things the right way. We'll see what happens. And then, you think about us historically. I don't think you can wait till January now. If you think about whether it's Bob Sanders, Jonathan Bobineau, Micah Hyde and Desmond King, Josie Jewell, George Kittle, guys at Anthony Hitchens and Neiman, both down there. And these are guys that we offered late in the process, if you will. There's a lot of good players out there, and that's one thing I've tried to tell our staff is that, let's just be patient. There's going to be a lot of guys that improve this year, during their senior years. And we'll just keep surveying that and make sure we fill out our class in a way we're comfortable with. So, you know, it's just, but it's been a highly unusual year, obviously, since last March. It's been a really different world.
Kirk, do you worry much about negative recruiting? Negative recruiting, I know.
Yeah, I mean, I don't worry about it. It's just a fact of life, and I'm not saying that in an accusing way, but it's just, you know, people have ways of being subtle and all that, and yeah. So I mean, it just, that's part of life, and you know, we anticipate that no different than you did 20 years ago. You know, 20 years ago, excuse me. You go, why would you go there? You're not going to win. So, you know, I mean, it's just there's a story every year, and you know, you just have to anticipate that and try to address that.
Thanks, everyone.
Thanks.
Okay, we'll see you guys back there.